report on Billy the Kid. Billy the Kid was what you could have called an original cowboy. He was known as a cattle thief in New Mexico. He bragged of 21 killings, and his real name was Henry McCarty, or Michael Henry McCarty. He was born in New York City in 1859. His mother, Catherine McCarty, later married William H. Anson in 1873. The new family settled in Silver City, New Mexico. Henry used his stepfather's name. His mother died in 1874, and Henry killed a man 3 years later, and was then a fugitive. He moved on to Lincoln, New Mexico, and went under the name as William H. Bonney. He met up with a rancher who had taken in other fugitives. The rancher was killed in a cattle land feud in 1978. Whoa, that's wrong. He and 5 others were regulators. They were deputized but didn't keep that law for long. He then agreed to testify against others in the cattle feud. He was afraid of them, so he escaped from the testifying. Pat Garrett was the sheriff in Lincoln County. Billy was trapped in 1880, December 1880, and was convicted April 9, 81. He was to be hung at a later date. Billy killed 2 deputies on April 29th to escape jail and was once again on the run. Pat Garrett found him near Fort Sumner, New Mexico, and killed him in what was called the last battle of Billy the Kid on July 14th.
To go next. Want to call on somebody? Bernadette, do you have yours? The camera. Come on, get it over with. Go ahead and do it. You don't have to. I did my report on Franklin D. Roosevelt. Franklin D. Roosevelt was born in 1882. His family was wealthy. He lived in Dutchess County, New York. He went to Harvard College, and in September 1901, President McKinley was murdered, and Theodore Roosevelt became president. After he left college, he married Anna Eleanor Roosevelt. She was a distant cousin of his. He went to the law school of Columbia University. He was a state senator of New York. He was also assistant secretary of the Navy during World War I. In the summer of 1921, Roosevelt became ill with polio, and when he recovered, he was not able to use his legs. Roosevelt was governor of New York when the stock market crashed in 1929. In 1931, Roosevelt was elected president of the United States. On March 3, 1933, the day before Roosevelt's inauguration, Adolf Hitler was elected Chancellor of Germany. In 1939, the United States got involved with the war in Europe. On December 7, 1941, at 7:30 a.m., the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. The next day, President Roosevelt declared war on Japan. On April 12, 1945, Roosevelt died of a stroke. The war in Europe ended on May 7, 1945, and the war in Japan ended on August 12, 1945.
My name is Chris Ayers, and I did my report on Billy the Kid. Billy the Kid was what you could have called an original cowboy. He was known as a cattle thief in New Mexico and bragged of 21 killings. His real name was Henry McCarty, or Michael Henry McCarty. He was born in New York City in 1859. His mother, Catherine McCarty, later married William H. Antrim in 1873. The new family settled in Silver City, New Mexico. Henry, or Billy, used his stepfather's name. His mother died in 1874. Billy then killed a man 3 years later and was then a fugitive. Billy moved on to Lincoln, New Mexico as William H. Bonney. He met up with a rancher who had taken in other fugitives. The rancher died when he was at the age of 78. He and 5 other of the fugitives were called the Regulators. They were deputized but didn't keep that law for long. They killed many people as the Regulators. Billy then agreed to testify against others in the cattle feud. He was afraid of them, so he escaped of the testifying. Pat Garrett was the sheriff of Lincoln County. Pat Garrett trapped Billy in 1880 December and convicted him on April 9, 1881. He was to be hung at a later date. Billy then killed 2 deputies on April 28th to escape jail and be on the run once again. Pat Garrett found him near Fort Sumner, New Mexico, and killed him July 14, 1881.
My name is Megan Rapoli, and I did Louisa May Alcott. Louisa May Alcott was born November 29, 1832, in Germantown, Pennsylvania. She was known for the book Little Women. She lived most of her life in Boston and Concord, Massachusetts. There, she grew up with Ralph Waldo Emerson, Theodore Parker, and Henry David Thoreau. She found out that her transcendental father was too impractical to provide for his wife and daughters. She taught for a short time, worked as a domestic, and then finally began to write. Her first publication was Pot Boilers, and then more serious work. She volunteered as a nurse after the Civil War started. She came in contact with typhoid from unsanitary conditions in the hospital. She was sent home and never healed completely again. But from the publications of her letters that she wrote, she formed a book and that brought the first taste of fame with the book Hospital Sketches. Stories appeared in newspapers like Atlantic Monthly. Because of the needs of money for her family, she wrote Little Women, which was an immediate success. Little Women was based on her own childhood. It described the adventures of a New England family of modest. Other books that she wrote were An Old-Fashioned Girl in 1870, Aunt Joe's Scrap Bag, which had 6 volumes between 1872 and 1882, Little Men, which is in 1871, 8 Cousins, which is 1875, and Joe's Boys, 1886. She was always tired and she was always in pain with no financial worries. Her last years of her life were shadowed by the deaths of her mother and youngest sister, May. May left behind a little daughter for Louisa to raise.
Idiot, that's all that matters. You got a minute?
Mine's about Dr. Gatling's rapid fire gun. It was used in the Civil War. Invented by Dr. Richard J. Gatling. It was a 58 caliber weapon. It consisted of 6 barrels mounted on a field carriage, which fired in rotation. Since each barrel had time to cool between firings, it could fire a long period of time without overheating. General Custer owned many of these guns. It could shoot up to 800 shots a minute. Custer left these guns behind in the battle of Custer's last stand because they were too much bother to carry.
Timothy lost.
Wait.
My report. My report's on Robert E. Lee. Robert E. Lee was general of the Confederate in the Civil War and was born in 1807 and died in 1870. He was born in Stafford in the Common in Westmoreland County in Virginia. His father was Henry Light Horse Harry Lee of the American Revolution. He was killed in 1818. Robert E. Lee's mother was Ann Carter. Robert graduated from West Point in 1829 and was second in his class. In June of 1831, he married Mary Randolph Cusley. They had 7 children. Lee was assigned to the Engineer Corps. In his first important independent assignment, Lee directed the work of improving the navigability of Mississippi River at St. Louis. This happened during 1837 to 1841. Then was stationed at Fort Hamlin Military and was in charge of New York Harbor, 1841 to 1846. Lee's first wartime serve was in Mexican War, 1846 through 1848. He was brevetted a major in Caragordo, lieutenant colonist, and contrast as in 1856 he wrote, "There were a few, I believe, in this Enlightenment age who will not acknowledge that slavery has insulated a moral and political evil in any country. I think it is greater evil to the white than the black race." On April 1861, Lee was offered to the field command of the army. Everything off of me. In July 1863, Lee invaded the North and once more, but he heavily repulsed at Gettysburg. He skillfully retreated and remained on the defense through 1864. Lee superior forces in the Battle of the Wilderness, Pennsylvania, and North Anna. On February 6, 1865, Lee was made General-in-Chief of Confederate forces, but in April, Lee was compelled to surrender his army to the Appomattox Courthouse on April 9th.
My name is Tom Sweat. I did my report on Ted Williams. Theodore Samuel Williams was born in San Diego on August 30th, 1918. He was a left-handed outfielder called up to the Red Sox in 1939. He batted .327 that year and .344 the next year, and then a record-setting .406 in 1941. No one has ever gotten over 400 batting average since then. He had 219 career walks, second only to Babe Ruth. He won 6 American League batting crowns, second only to Ty Cobb. He had 521 career home runs and a .344 career batting average. He was the most valuable player of the American League in 1946 and also in 1949. I believe he was the greatest hitter of all time, and he could have surpassed all the records had he not had to lose 5 years of his prime to military service. He retired in 1960 and was inducted to the Hall of Fame in 1966. He managed the Washington Senators and the Texas Rangers from 1969 to 1972.
Hi, my name is Dawn Brown, and I'm telling you a subject about cultural arts and artists in America. And here's a book that I've got some of my information out of. But first I'm going to let you see this picture. This is an African picture, and since I'm an Afro-American, this is my culture. So it was, I drew this from a sculpture, that had sculpted this like in 1980. And I'm going to take you through a journey in this book. And this is an African picture. It's made by Ruth Andrus, and it's the African sculpture. It's made from African woodstone. And this, you can find this in America because all these different cultural arts are in America. Here's another picture. It's an Indian picture. And as you know, Indians have a lot of culture. They show a lot of cultural arts, their dances, their movements, and different things like that in self-portraits. So this is an Indian dance, and it's called Zini Rain Dance. And it's made by Alice Asmar. I'm going to show you different ones. This is a jungle picture. This is made by Frederick Brown. And the title is Good and Evil. So this tells you about different tribes and enemies. And one more. This is one more from, this is a culture art from Martin Shala. It's Clear Hanu, and it comes from Honolulu, Hawaii. So this is all I have to tell you. So I hope everybody's learned something from culture art.
Thanks for the class, and I did my report on Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman was born into slavery on a plantation in Dorchester County, which is in Maryland, in 1821. I noticed when doing research in the dictionary, they say that her master forced her to marry John Tubman, but on the tape we listened to, she said she wanted to marry him. They were married in 1844. She believed that God thought it was wrong for her people to be held in slavery. She knew the evil of slavery because 2 of her sisters had been sold, and she had been brutally beaten. Then she then decided she would escape. In 1849, late at night, she began a perilous trip to the north, where she would be free. When she reached Philadelphia, she worked as a cook. After her friends told her of the Underground Railroad, Harriet decided to return south and rescue as many people as possible. She was called the Many Supper People because she led more than 300 fugitive slaves to freedom. In 12 years, she made 19 trips, using the North Star as a guide. She led groups of fugitive slaves along the long, dangerous road to freedom. In 1857, she succeeded in freeing her aged parents and found them a home in Auburn, New York. She became a popular speaker at anti-slavery meetings. During the Civil War, she helped the Union as an army cook, a scout, and a spy. She helped gather information behind Confederate and encouraged slaves to join the Union forces. After the war, she went to live in Auburn, where she founded a home for needy blacks. She continued to work to improve the lives of former slaves. After her death on March 10, 1913, the people of Auburn erected a monument in her memory.
These kids cover. Patrick Henry was born in 1736. He went to school for a short time, then his father taught him. Then he started to study law. Student Patrick received his license to practice law in 1760. In 1764, he was in the Virginia House of Burgesses. In 1774, the Virginia colony voted Henry to the first Continental Congress. In 1775, he was in the second Continental Congress. In 1776 to 1779, he was governor, and then again in 1784 to 1786. In 1785, he gave his Give Me Liberty, Give Me Death. In 1794, he bought Red Hill State in Appomattox, Virginia, and retired. In 1796, he was elected governor for the 6th time, but refused. Patrick Henry started to become a candidate representative in the Virginia state legislature. He won, but died before he could take the office.
Name is Andrew Schultz. I did my report on Paul Laurence Dunbar. He was an American novelist and poet. He was born in Dayton, Ohio in 1872. He was one of the first authors to picture black life with honesty and realism. His works are historically important, though most critics do not consider him a
a major writer. In much of his writing, he portrayed the lives and customs of speech of Black Americans. His best novel, The Sport of the Gods, describes the hardships of Southern blacks, but also their unity and freedom. He died at the age of 34.
And my thing was on Mark Twain. Mark Twain, or Sam Clemens, was one of the major authors of American fiction. Twain was also considered the greatest humorist in American literature. A white man suit and a cigar became his trademark in public appearances. Twain's varied number of books, including novels, travel, narratives, short stories, sketches, and essays. His writings about the Mississippi River, such as The Adventures of Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn, have been quite popular among modern readers. His last novel was The Mysterious Stranger, was published in 1916 after Twain's death. I'm Fleming, and I'm doing my report on Sitting Bull. Sitting Bull was not the greatest chief in history. He was not the boldest warrior, yet he is best remembered. Sitting Bull, chief of Hunkpapa, Teton's Sioux tribes, was born in South Dakota in about 1831. At the age of 14, he was on the warpath, fighting the Crow Indians and making his name as a warrior. He also became highly respected among Sioux tribes as a medicine man. In 1876, Sitting Bull and his followers joined forces with Crazy Horse and other Sioux chiefs. The medicine man participated in the Indians' greatest victory, the Battle of the Little Bighorn. After the famous battle, when troops were sent out to round up all the Swedes, Sitting Bull escaped into Canada, where he stayed until 1881. At that time, he surrendered and was put away for 2 years as a prisoner of war at Fort Randall in South Dakota. In 1883, he was placed on the Standing Rock Reservation. For the most part, Sitting Bull stayed on the reservation for the rest of his life. Yet his hatred for the white man was clear in spite of surrender. He brooded over his fate and dreamed of the days when he and his warriors were free to roam the plains. In 1833, he asked to make a speech at the ceremony opening the North Pacific Railroad's Transcontinental. In December 1890, death came to Sitting Bull. To stop the spread of the ghost dance, McLaughlin decided that the still hostile chief should be arrested. When the police, who were Indians themselves, came to Sitting Bull, away he refused to go with them. One of his angry followers shot the arresting officer. In response, the police fatally shot Sitting Bull. After Sitting Bull's death, a band of Swedes led by Bigfoot led the reservation and disappeared into the Badlands. There they were rounded up by the 7th Cavalry and taken to the Wounded Knee Creek. This is Brandon Creekmore, and I did my report on Benjamin Franklin. Benjamin Franklin's parents were, Benjamin Franklin's father was Joshua Franklin. He was a tall chandler that was married twice and had 17 children. His mother was Abiah Folger, Joshua's second wife, and Benjamin Franklin's mother. Benjamin Franklin was born in 1706 in Boston, Massachusetts. He was the 15th child of 17 children and the 10th son. At 10 years old, after grammar school, he went to work for his father. At 13 years, he apprenticed the printing press with his brother James. At 15, he wrote newspaper articles at night and delivers papers in the day. In 1724, when Benjamin went to London to finish learning his trade and he purchased equipment for his own paper. He worked for 2 printing houses in London. In 1726, he returned to Philadelphia, and in 1729, he bought the Pennsylvania Gazette. He married Deborah Reed in 1730. Benjamin Franklin founded the first library in 1731 and published Poor Richard's Almanac in 1732. He became clerk of the Pennsylvania General Assembly in 1736 and he was appointed deputy postmaster of Philadelphia in 1737. He organized the city's first fire department and introduced methods
for the improvement of streets, paving, and lighting. He submitted plans for the University of Pennsylvania and devised means to correct the excessive smoking of chimneys. In 1744, Benjamin Franklin invented the Franklin stove. It furnished greater heat and used less fuel. Benjamin Franklin proved lightning to be an electrical phenomenon. In 1754, he performed his most famous experiment with a kite. He invented the lightning rod and proved that there are two kinds of electricity, positive and negative. In 1748 to 1764, he served on the Pennsylvania Assembly. In 1753, he was appointed the Deputy Postmaster General. And in 1754, he represented Pennsylvania in the Albany Convention. He obtained horses, wagons, and supplies for the French and Indian War. Franklin spent 5 years in England as the chief American representative and came back to Pennsylvania for 2 years. He was sent back to England again for 11 years. Divided between England and the colonies. He tried to resolve our problems with England. He came home to find the Revolutionary War had already broken out in 1775. In 1776, at 70 years old, he was one of the 5 to draft the Declaration of Independence. He was assigned the job of getting help from France and ended up being our minister to France. He had signed a treaty with Great Britain, and in 1785 and 79 years old, he requested to resign from France. For 2 years, he served on the Pennsylvania Executive Council and served on the convention that drew up the Constitution of the United States. He was president of Pennsylvania's Abolition Society, urging the removal of slavery. Benjamin Franklin died on April 17, 1790, and he was 84 years old.
My name is Anna Hopper, and I did my report on Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson was the 3rd President of the United States. He was inaugurated in 1801. He was born April 13, 1743, in Albemarle County, Virginia. He had 6 brothers and sisters, and his mother's name was Jane Randolph Jefferson. His father's name was Peter Jefferson. Thomas was 14 when his father died, and took it hard because he looked up to him and he wanted to follow in his footsteps. He was the oldest son, so he was the head of the house. He inherited 2,500 acres and at least 20 slaves by the time he was 21. In 1772, he married Martha Wells Skelton. He wrote the Declaration of Independence. He designed the state capitol, University of Virginia, and his son Monticello. He developed the decimal system that helped people keep track of money. He founded the University of Virginia. He was an architect, musician, scientist, farmer, diplomat, lawyer, surveyor, astronomer, mathematician, and anthropologist. He knew 71 languages like Latin, Greek, Italian, French, and Spanish. He served in the House of Burgesses. He graduated from the College of William and Mary of Virginia. He was the first president to be inaugurated in Washington. He died July 4th, 1826, at age 83. He was very ill. He died. This is my picture.
April 27th, 1822. Hyzen Ulysses Grant was born in Point Pleasant, Ohio. From 1839 to 1843, he attended U.S. Military Academy and went at West Point from 1845 to 1848. He served under General Zachary Taylor and General Winfield Scott in the Mexican War. In 1848, he was promoted to first lieutenant upon return to the United States and later married Julia Dent. In May of 1850, Julia gives birth to the first of 4 children, Frederick Grant. In 1854, Grant resigned from the Army under charges of alcoholism. In 1868, Grant was elected 18th President of the United States. In 1872, he was re-elected President. Then from 1874 to 1876, Grant traveled around the world with his wife, Julia. In 1881, he accepted the position of Mexican Southern Railroad, only to see it go bankrupt 2 years later. On July 23, 1885, Grant dies of throat cancer at the age of 63.
I don't remember my report on Chief Joseph. He was the chief of the Nez Perce tribe. The date of his birth is uncertain, but he died on September 21st, 1904. He was a man of maturity, a recognized leader, probably 35 years old. In 1863, his people had entered into a treaty by which they agreed to give up roaming about and settle on a reservation near Fort Lafayette. He said all men were made by the same great spirit. They are all brothers. The earth is the mother of all people, and all people should have equal rights on it. In the troubled years while Joseph was fighting for his land, his health steadily failed, but his policy of passive resistance was stubbornly maintained by his 2 very different sons.
It's really down here, and I live on the porch on Pocahontas. She was born in 1595 and died in 1670. Daughter of Chief Powhatan. She was the daughter of Chief Powhatan. She saved the life of Captain John Smith. Powhatan's warriors had captured Smith and were about to put him to death when Pocahontas begged her father not to kill him. Smith was set free. Powhatan's tribe was called Algonquin Indians who lived in the Tidewater region of Virginia. Pocahontas means playful woman. She often brought food to the nearest army. In 1613, she went to England. A man named Captain Samuel Aragon took Pocahontas to Jamestown as a hostage. The settlers baptized her to a Christian and gave her the name Rebecca. At Jamestown, she met John Ralph, a young widower. In 1614, Ralph suggested permission to marry Pocahontas. Governor Thomas Dale agreed. They were married on April 5th, 1614, in Episcopal Church at Jamestown. In 1615, the Ralph's only child, Thomas, was born. They sailed to England for a vacation, a visit. On the way back, Pocahontas died of a fever. She was buried in St. George Church.
I'm Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon was born in Yorba Linda, California, January 9, 1913. His parents were Quakers, and Nixon's boyhood was mostly spent in winter or small towns in Western Union, California. In his later years, he went to Whittier College where he played college football. And at Duke University, his record of a good student won him a full scholarship. Richard Nixon was a congressman at age 33, a public figure at 35, a senator at 37, vice president at 39, and the only 2-term Republican vice president at 43. In 1960, Nixon saw the ultimate triumph slip through his fingers by less than 200,000 votes in his 1960 presidential campaign against John F. Kennedy. And on January 20th, 1969, he became the 37th President of the United States. He was the only president to resign from office.
Sam Stalbert, and I did my report on Robert Marvin Hall, which is also Bobby Hall. Bobby was 3 when he received his first pair of ice skates for Christmas and said, "I want to skate now." The whole family lived in Point Anne, Ontario. Bobby was a natural athlete, born with strong muscles and quick reflexes. Most of the years, the kids could play hockey from October to March. Bobby spent all his spare time on the ice. Sometimes he even got up before dawn so he would have the rink all to himself. When Bobby's father was younger, he had dreamed of being a hockey star. He also was a good player and could skate fast. But he got married and his dream ended. So the father passed his dream to his oldest son, which was Bobby. Bobby's father spent many long hours teaching him to play. By the time he was 5, he could play much better than the kids older than him. Bobby began to play on a league when he was 10. When he was 12, he played on a team with grown men. It was there in 1951 when he was discovered by the pros. The Chicago Blackhawks sponsored Belleville's Junior B hockey team. The head scout of the Hawks, Bob Wilson, saw Bobby playing one day, and he said he was the kind of kid you see once in a lifetime, and put Bobby's name on the negotiations list and reserved Bobby for the Hawks. Mr. Hull was overjoyed. Bobby left at the age of 14. They won a lot of Junior B games and made it to the finals a few times and won the whole league once. When he turned 18, he was supposed to go to the real NHL Blackhawks. But Bobby got married and got divorced a year later and played for Blackhawks. He was the fastest skater and the hardest slap shot in the league. In the 60-61 season, they won the finals. He also set a record in season goals, which was 58. Right before Bobby retired, a whole new career opened up for him, a new league, the World Hockey Association. It was formed in 1972.
Joseph Smith. I did my report on Red Fox. He was born in St. Louis, Missouri on December 1922. He had a brother named Fred Jr. He was 4 years older than Red. He lived with his grandmother when he was a small child. When Fred was young, he wanted to be in show business. He would listen to Fred Allen and other radio comedian programs. He was a single entertainer. He enjoyed being in Hollywood. In 1955, he had to alternate his nightclub engagements with a part-time job as a sign painter to make a living. He had a breakthrough in 1964 when appearing at Sugar Hill in San Francisco with a salary of $1,250 a week. Later on, he was on TV. That's all I got.
My name is Derek Gordon. I did my report on Amelia Earhart. For almost 30 years, there has been doubt surrounding the mystery of Amelia Earhart and her navigator, Fred Noonan. A fascinated world followed her globe circling flight in 1937 from California to Brazil, Africa, India, and New Guinea. Then on the longest overwater leg from New Guinea to tiny Holland Island, the wondrous pair vanished without a trace. The result was one of the most interesting and widely reported news stories of the 20th century. It all started in 1937. The effort has involved 4 expeditions to the islands of the Western and Pacific Ocean. Nearly thousands of interviews with people closely associated with Amelia Earhart and her navigator, Frederick Noonan, are somehow connected with the events surrounding their disappearance. The research now fills 3 filing cabinets in KCBS in San Francisco. Amelia Earhart changed the lives of millions of Americans the world over. Because of people who dared to reach out like Earhart and Noonan. We now orbit men around Earth and turn our eyes to the stars and what lies beyond Amelia Earhart and Noonan. They chose their destinies, not waiting as most of us do for our decisions to be made for us. Amelia and Fred may have listened too closely to the commands of their own egos.
And that was some of the popular pieces on the tape. And if you...
Day the 26th, I was wearing the bathing can, we started across the bedroom, and when I gave you the paper, and she came to you, and asked you, what should she do, and then you told her to go to the hospital. And she told you that the father was the one who did it. And when those bruises were bad enough to send him to the hospital. I remember for the photo.
Cross hands.
Okay. So you're saying, you're just taking her side saying that you think it was the father. Are you sure?
She said it was absolutely the father.
How is it the father?
Yes.
So you said the bruises were pretty serious.
Yes.
Enough to take them to NCV. Have they had any cuts other than bruises? No. And she said that Hannah got run across the room. Little baby.
Yes.
How bad was she hurt?
Well, she had 3 bruises. I can't remember exactly.
Did she like lose any burns or have any broken bones?
She didn't have any broken bones. She had bruises on her head and stuff.
And has the stepchildren, have they come in and never had any problems with them, any bruises?
I didn't really have any stepchildren. I never seen any of the stepchildren. It was good. They had transition.
And okay. My first witness is Julia Farmer, and she is one of the stepchildren. So, they're saying you live in the same house. And you say he never beats y'all. At least not you and your other sister. How often does he beat the mother and the two?
He doesn't do that. Because, I lived there pretty much the whole time, except when he was with my mom. And when she came in, he never beat her. He treats her like a princess. He gives her everything.
So, how do you, why do they have all these bruises all over their face and stuff? You don't know how they do it, what they do to it? Is it true that he pulled Tracy out through the door and dragged her and was beating her in the head and pulled her in the car? No. So, the neighbor was wrong in just saying. Does he usually wear glasses or not?
I don't know. I don't really talk to my neighbor. I don't look at him.
So do you love your father?
Yes, very much.
And he's never hurt you any other way but this one.
Right.
How often does he get drunk?
I mean, you know how a normal person, one or two occasions, like when they go out and party or something on a special occasion. But I mean, he doesn't go out every night and get drunk. He doesn't go out every night and drink.
Does he get really fierce when he gets drunk?
Well, kind of. Like a normal drunk person, I don't know. Because when he's like that, the best thing is just not to deal with it.
Just stay away. And so, what do you think with the picture
mother and I have no further questions.
Yes, I do. My clients didn't even know they had any stepsisters and that y'all did not live in the house, and it wouldn't be their stepsister, it would be their half-sister. So, I don't understand. Someone has to be lying here. Because of the fact that they've never seen them, they've never lived in their house, and the mother has never supported them. And how do you know the neighbor? Do you know them? If you live there, how do you know the neighbor?
I don't know them.
Have you saw him?
Everyone sees your neighbor out in the yard when they're raking leaves by driving out of the driveway.
And I just can't understand why you say you lived in the house with this family. And you and who, your sister, your brother, who lived with you? And you say these are your sisters. You said they're your stepsisters. They have to be your half sisters. So.
I understand they're my stepsisters. No, my lawyer did.
So how long do you get along with so-called your stepsisters, whatever?
Yeah, yes.
I haven't heard one.
My next person is Rachel, and she is the other sister. Julia was saying that he rarely comes home from mom, and she never beats y'all.
Right.
And did you know the neighbor
No, I've seen him go to mailbox and stuff, but
never really had contact with him? So do you think he could be lying just to take the
probably,
mother's
because I
side?
think she's always liked my mother. Well, she's not my mother, but,
Well,
and she doesn't even claim us. We live there with our dad.
so he is your biological.
Yes.
Do you have a real mother?
Yes.
Do you know where she is? Has he ever hit you for just discipline?
No, he's never hit me.
And have you like made back grades and stuff and had to come back? You know how they got all these bruises on them?
No. See, our father, he has money. I think she's just outfitted. Because I don't get along with her. I don't get along with them. They know who we are.
Yes. How old are you? Well, there has to be that your father must have been messing around with another woman at that time because of the fact that she is 15 and they were still dating. They were married. So your father must have been having an affair with your mother. Could it be that you two are just the goody children? He likes y'all more than he likes the others? Because
He treats them all the same. He treats all of us the same.
I don't think like you.
My next witness is the neighbor and Louise.
Pretty good, ain't he? He's always so old, he's not looking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, come here. So, how long have you been living in the neighborhood?
Well, I have been living there like 5 years, 5, 6 years.
Have you ever seen father beating his children?
No, I have never seen him leave.
Because the other neighbor said that he saw the father pull Tracy out and dragging her and
beaten in the head one day at 6:30 at night?
I've never seen him beat them. Me and their father, good friends. I have never seen him beat them.
How often does he usually drink?
Not often.
Does he ever get abusive?
But he's never like that around me, too.
No. I know further.
Across the dam.
Yes. How would you know if he's drunk or not if you're not there all the time around him and in his house?
Well, if he would drink, he would call me or tell me or something like that.
Oh, so y'all were good friends?
Yeah.
Because my friends have never seen you before. And if you have seen them getting beaten, you'd have to be into their house or around them. And they said that they've never seen you.
And I just said, I have not seen him hit them. I have not seen him hit them.
Well, as you just said a few minutes ago, you said that you seen the kids have bruises on them from their father.
No, I didn't.
I have no further questions.
Let me see. Next one.
My next witness is Keisha, and she is his sister, and she lives above the garage. How long have you been living with your brother? About a month. A month. Have you seen him get drunk and any verbal or physical abuse to these kids? Nope. Does he favor any of the children more than others? He likes them all the same. He's doing things. And do you think the mother could be just doing it to get back at him or something? Just doing it for money? Any bricks?
My parents did not have a garage where they lived, so how could you have lived in their garage?